When people ask me for the best low-intensity, steady-state exercise for getting rid of fat while building muscle with calisthenics, my response doesn't usually thrill them so much. Walking. Just walk a lot. Today, we'll talk about how many steps you need to do depending on your goals, how to make walking less boring and more enjoyable, and overall, how I stay this lean using walking as my only low-intensity, steady-state cardio activity. And hey, if I can do it on a prosthetic leg, so can you. My ancient ancestor, Hippocrates, said that walking is the best medicine. A little bit later, Friedrich Nietzsche said that all great thoughts are conceived while walking. And in my opinion, there aren't a lot of problems that can't be solved with a walk long enough.
Back in my early 20s, I had a severe motorcycle accident and I had to spend the next 5 years either bedridden or on crutches as my doctors tried to reconstruct my left leg. After a series of 13 operations, which all eventually failed, we decided to amputate, I got my first prosthesis, and I learned how to walk again.
It's difficult to express how a simple activity we take so much granted for feels after having lost the ability to perform it for years, but I still remember my first strolls back in 2013 when I got my first prosthesis. Walking back then helped me to build up my confidence again, it improved my mood, and combined with calisthenics, it helped me get lean and build muscle at the same time. Still, you don't have to lose a leg in order to appreciate walking again in life. And even though a lot of people think of this habit as something monotonous, as something boring, and even as something that only old people do, you'll be amazed by how beneficial it can be for you both physically and mentally if you incorporate it into your lifestyle. Personally, I think that the two best times of the day to incorporate walking into your weekly routine are either early in the morning, so before all your daily responsibilities, before things get in the way. That way you can start your day fresh, energized, stress-free, and clear-headed. Usually I like to work out early in the morning, but in case I don't, I'll always replace that with a morning walk, as I'm doing today. And I would say that the second best time, what I always do is after work in the afternoon, so before the evening or before going home after work. That way you can decompress and go back home relaxed and prepare for a good night quality sleep.
The way I stay motivated and enjoy my walks is by listening to audiobooks.
Chapter 1. Fear.
Personally, I could never stick to a traditional paperback reading routine since it's something that I only have the energy and patience to do on holidays or when I have a lot of extra time. But nowadays, usually every evening after work, I put on my headphones and I make sure that I get all my remaining steps of the day while I'm at the same time listening to an audiobook. This helps me decompress after a long day and to also get through minimum one book a month. If listening to an audiobook doesn't do it for you, here are 5 different ideas on how to make walking more enjoyable. You can subscribe to a podcast that you find interesting and commit to only listening to it while walking. You can see it as quality time with your significant other. If a big part of your job requires talking on the phone, you can schedule as many of your business calls during one long walk. Or if a big walk isn't practical for you, you can spread your steps over a couple of small walks across the day. I like to place these strategically during low energy points of the day, like the classic 3 p.m. energy dip, and when my brain feels foggy and non-creative after spending a lot of time in front of a screen, since brisk walks have shown to rejuvenate you physically, mentally, and creatively. Another way to add more steps to your day is doing all your outdoor chores, or as many of them as possible, on foot. For example, instead of taking the car to do grocery shopping, I'll just walk to the store, and this way I'll even do some extra lifting on the way back.
So, how many steps should you be getting per day? Well, even though there are no magic numbers that apply to every single one of us, here are some guidelines that I use with people that I coach that work really well. If your goal is maintenance, meaning that you're at a body fat percentage that you're happy with, then I recommend having as a minimum goal per day the classic 10,000 step mark, but that is not including your workout steps. If your goal is fat loss, then I recommend a minimum of 15,000 steps per day, but here's the key. You want to build that up gradually, especially if you're starting from very low activity levels. Let's say, for example, you average 5,000 steps per day. You don't want to switch immediately to 15,000 steps, because even if you're very motivated in the beginning, let's say you just started a new fitness routine and you're excited, or you've just set your New Year's Eve resolutions, whatever the case, when we start with a new goal, beginning with too much volume, too much intensity when motivation is high might work for a little while, but it never works in the long run. Because when that motivation subsides, and it will subside eventually, what happens is that you end up with a goal that is too big, too intimidating, and most of the times, most people during this phase quit. So if you want to build a routine that is sustainable, first of all, and effective in the long run, you want to give your habit time to build strong roots, and you want to start small. This is why my recommendation for people with low activity levels is adding 1,500 steps per week on top of what you were previously getting. So for example, let's say you were getting 5,000 steps per day. Your first week, you want to aim for 6,500 steps. Your second week, you want to aim for 8,000 steps, and you can keep adding steps until you reach your goal. Either that's 10,000 steps for maintenance, as we said, 15,000 steps for fat loss, or you can even build it up to 20,000 steps for extreme fat loss if you really, really like walking though. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't walk more if you really feel like it, but just make sure that no matter what, you always get those extra 1,500 steps per week. No matter how low your motivation is, just try to maintain that momentum. Lastly, one more important note here that I wanted to make sure that I don't forget is that even though strength training and increased physical activity are essential for getting strong, lean, and healthy, and they will always speed up things when it comes to fat loss. Unless your nutrition is on point, fat loss cannot be guaranteed. So it's about 6:30 in the morning. I'm about to head up for my morning walk, and the temperature right now is, as you can see here, -6 degrees Celsius, which is this much Fahrenheit.
Another benefit that I get from walking is cold exposure. As the temperature drops and we move into the more chilly seasons of the year, I always try to dress as lightly as possible when moving outdoors. I find that this is the best way to progressively adapt to the colder weather and gain all the benefits that cold exposure offers, things such as brown fat activation, boosting your metabolism and better utilization of fat as an energy source, potentially a stronger immune system, and increased energy, since the cold and fresh air are a great way to wake up both your body and mind.
Besides becoming and staying strong and lean, walking has a ton of other benefits. For starters, walking is as low impact as it gets. It's joint friendly, it promotes good posture, and it can even help with musculoskeletal problems such as lower back pain. Having a lot of friends here in my hometown that engage in a lot of long distance running, in cycling, especially with running on hard surfaces such as cement, I often see that most of these people after 30 end up having long-term issues, chronic problems with joints such as knee problems, lower back problems, even with upper body issues for cyclists, for example, from the posture that you have being on a bike. So preferably, although I am a fan of the bike as a green means of transportation, I wouldn't use it so much for working out just because we sit all day, and therefore, spending more time in a sit position to do your workout doesn't sound for me like the best idea. Again, I'm not against cycling or running. If it works for you, that's great. But if you feel that you have issues because of these activities, then you might have to consider something more low impact, such as walking. Benefit number 2, one of my favorite walking benefits, is that it doesn't compromise my strength training workout edge. What I mean is that I will always feel 100% during a typical calisthenics workout routine of mine, even if I walk before that, even if I walk 30, 40, or 60 minutes. Whereas in the past, when I would jog before my calisthenics routines, I would always feel a little bit heavier in the legs, and I would feel that basically I wouldn't get 100% during my workout. So not only doesn't walking compromise your strength training workout edge, but it can even help you speed up recovery. Since walking increases blood flow without having a significant toll on your body, it decreases inflammation, and it can help you manage stress a lot better, especially when done in nature. Walking is one of the best ways to help you recover faster. Now, even if you don't have the luxury of walking in a nice, comfortable, peaceful forest like this one over here, what you can do if you live, let's say, in a big, noisy city is what I used to do in the past. You can get yourself a nice quality set of headphones, maybe even with an option of noise cancellation. Just make sure you only use that when it's safe around you. And you can put on some peaceful sounds of ocean waves, of birds chirping, of rivers flowing, whatever works for you. And voila, you can be in a nice, peaceful walking environment. Finally, one of the benefits that I consider major when it comes to walking is improved sleep. Having a lot of issues with sleep in the past, not being able to sleep early, not being able to get enough sleep, and not being able to get quality sleep, what worked wonders for me was adding a big walk after work. As I mentioned previously, I do this every day. Ideally, if possible, you want to do this around sunset hours, so when the light is more orange and red, because these are the type of sun rays, this is the type of light that helps you release more neurotransmitters such as melatonin, which speeds up your whole process of falling asleep easily. So give this a try. It's not mandatory that you walk always around sunset hours, especially during the winter, for example, when it's something like that is not practical. But getting a big walk before going home, before getting into bed, seems to be very helpful when it comes to sleep for a lot of people. Okay, so I'm back at the Bodyweight muscle base, and before I end today's video, here's my final advice for adding more steps during the coming new year. Number 1 is find a way to make walking enjoyable that works for you. This can be any of the recommendations that I shared with you today, or you can even look for something different. Number 2 is find a time of the day to walk that is practical for you. Again, morning and late afternoon are ideal for me, but that doesn't mean that they have to be ideal for you. Just make sure that this time is preserved specifically for walking and nothing else can get in the way, and try to keep it fixed for at least 2 months, I would say, in the beginning, until your habit builds strong roots. Tip number 3 is find a decent step tracking watch. When I first got started with adding more steps to my daily routine, I found that having a watch that is both good at tracking steps, but also a watch that I enjoy wearing, gave me some extra motivation, which makes sense since in general, tracking a new behavioral pattern always helps with establishing a new habit. If you want a recommendation from me, one that is a relatively low budget one and both good looking, durable and effective, is the one I'm wearing here. I'll include it below. That was all for today. Happy 2022, and until next time, keep on walking.